So while that's warming up. So hi, I'm Duncan. I will be asking for you to do some stuff tonight. You're going to be writing on post-its. Is everyone comfortable writing? Is everyone comfortable with post-its? Yeah. Okay, and you don't want to see my noggin, do you? So let's... Look at that, technology. Cool, okay. Can everyone hear me at the back? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Right, so yes, the staff testers, thanks for inviting us, Matt. Pleasure to be here. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about a model I use for helping me learn and grow my skills within whatever chosen topic I need to learn. And I've cringily titled it Self-Development for the Self-Employed because it kind of really formed itself when I was a contractor in the testing community, in the testing market, and making sure that I could get the next contract. But actually the stuff I'm talking about here is not revolutionary, and you can do it whilst being an employee. Okay, so let's just, I don't want people to switch off if you're not a contractor, okay? Right. So yeah, so as Matt says, I'm Duncan Nisbet. I go by Dunks. I'm only Duncan when my wife is telling me off. So yeah, if you call me Duncan, I'm going to come back at you thinking I'm in trouble. Okay. So this quote, what can I say about Agassi? Nothing. I found this quote on Google when looking for time is money quotes. I wanted something a bit more funny. And I came up with this, and I like this one. I cannot afford to waste my time making money. Now, when I first saw this, I was kind of like, yeah, it's right. In order to make money, I need to learn and get better. But actually, when I reread it, it doesn't make that sense at all. Now how I read this is that actually making money shouldn't be the be-all and end-all, right? I don't learn to make money. I learn to improve myself. And money is a nice byproduct, okay? So that's all that slide is saying. But yeah, the crux of tonight's talk, right? As a contractor, if I'm not in work, I'm not being paid, right? And if I want to learn, then that can be costly. Certainly looking down the certification routes. When you start looking at software testing education, you start landing on the big corporate training schemes, right? I'll get onto them in a moment. And they look big and scary. So I had the challenge of how can I stay current without spending loads of money? So you lose twice, right? If you're not in the office, okay, I'm going to go on a 3-day training course. That's 3 days not in the office that I don't get paid, plus the training course is costing me a fortune, right? So I had to be really sure the course I'm going on was good value for money and it was going to help me, okay? So where my energy is going, okay? So as I said, you can still use this technique as an employee, okay? So the stuff I'm going to talk about is all about just how I learn generally. And now I've been part of an organisation for 18 months, so I've been using this technique before. And actually I was using it when I was a perm employee before going contract. So yeah, just stick with it and see what happens. Right, so the agenda tonight for my talk is my whirlpool model. I've only called it the whirlpool model in the past couple of days because that's how I started to think about it. So feel free, if you think of it differently, let me know. I'll be really interested to see how you approach it. Second agenda point is you need to interact with your own education. Okay, you can't just sit there and consume information. You need to work with it, you need to remodel it in your head, and you need to regurgitate it. Okay? And then the third point is about the echo chamber. About you breaking confirmation bias and groupthink as well to make sure you're not just repeating what everyone else is saying. Okay, so I've gone the wrong way. There we go, whirlpool model. So this is my technique for knowledge acquisition. There are many more. This is mine. That is a whirlpool. Anyone disagree? Brilliant. So on the outside, you've all seen the pictures of, you've got the same model in my head, right, of ships going around a whirlpool, yeah? So on the outside, you've got the free stuff, and this stuff readily available. And as you get sucked in deeper into the topic, you start finding, you go, Roger, I can pay 10 quid for that. I can do a little bit, I could buy that book. And then you get into the costly stuff in the middle, right? And then that's you getting sucked into the whirlpool down there. And it's interesting, but it's not fact, that the more costly the training, the deeper you go into that training. So this whirlpool works on 2 dimensions, or 3, okay? Any questions about the model before I keep going?
Is that always true?
What's that?
The more you spend on the training?
Not at all. That's why I said it's not always true. So you can go deep for free or for cheap. Thanks for the challenge. Okay, so just going to throw up some examples that I use, right, to help me learn. And part of the exercise tonight as well will be to take Post-it and add stuff that you use to help you learn, okay? Because then that will be something that everyone else can learn from, right? So I'm sure you have a technique that isn't on there that you use, you stick it up on there, that might be news for someone else, right? People might not realise that meetups exist. Okay, so Josh, this is your second meetup? Quality. So just making people aware of all the different sources there are for learning. Now, sorry?
Can we turn them around?
That would be amazing. No, we'll do it. We'll do it in the bio break. Yep. Cool. So as you can see, there's some overlap, right? So some resources are free, some go from free to cheap, and some go from cheap to costly. Okay, so it's very hard just to bracket in. So I can find a workshop that is cheap, and I can find a workshop that's really expensive. Some audiobooks are free, some are paid for, right? So this is just how I kind of map the different sources I use, right, over this whirlpool. Just one example of the kind of lengths I went to for, there's a course called Problem Solving Leadership, which is run by a guy called Jerry Weinberg, he was a computer before computers were a thing, right? So when computer was a job title, that was his job title, right? Jerry Weinberg, Johanna Rothman, and Esther Darby run this course in Albuquerque twice a year, and it's really difficult to get onto because it's a popular course. I sold my car to go on that course, right? So telling the wife is like, well, yeah, it's a 5-day course, but it's immersive, it's experiential, and it's in Albuquerque. And she's like, is that in Norfolk? I was like, no, it's it's over in the States. So that took a lot of convincing, and the whole persuading your significant other or your boss to do training is a whole different talk, right?
Which Chris will touch on later.
Yeah. Good. So yeah, just the kind of different levels of this cost involved. Is there any questions up there about like any surprise you?
Nothing that surprised me.
Good.
Should you do everything free before you start on the cheap?
Well, it depends how quickly you get into it, right? So I do a lot of time in the free,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at my peers. I'm looking at what they're talking about, and I'm going, is this a thing I need to be interested in? I mean, one of the things I also want to talk about is your motivations for learning. Not from my talk. I think it's just be generally good to see like why are people here tonight, right? I was asking Josh that question. Yeah, what's your motivation for learning? So if there's something at work that's challenging me, then I'll skirt around all the free stuff, definitely, yeah. But at some point, I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and say, right, I need to buy a book on this, or I need to do an online training course just to see what happens. And again, there's free training courses, so I might try the free one, which tends to give you like some modules, and then to get to the juicy stuff, you've got to pay anyway. So yeah, so I skirt round and round, and there's lots of topics that I'm still on that outer rings. It's like, no, I'm not ready to commit to that yet. There's not the return on investment. There's no point in me paying for that course, for example. There's loads of classroom courses, but there's not one there's not one that I want to do for that. So yeah, but it all depends. So some of them I dive straight in deeply, right? For example, I'm still on the edge of blockchain because I haven't got time to go into that because I'm exploring other stuff at different levels. I haven't got time to go into blockchain at the moment, so I'm still skirting around the free stuff and I look at the blogs that come up, for example. Yep. Okay, thank you. Good question. Okay, so that's the model done. Does anybody have any more questions on the model? No? Cool. Right, so interaction. So sitting there reading a blog, hang on, I've got a picture for this. I like this one. Again, I don't know who Flannery is, but I love this quote. I write because I don't know what I think until I read what I say, right? So it's all very well and good taking information in, and you sit there and you think, well, I'm reading, therefore I'm learning. For me, that's not true, and I agree with that statement. So for me to learn and for me to process the knowledge I've acquired, I have to think about it, and that I write about it, I talk about it, and yeah, I just keep experimenting with it, right? So we get into some shiny animations, right? So we get all these sources of information, right? So we have all this input into us from different sources, from blogs, from books, from video content, and we take it in. So for a given topic, what we need to do in order to try and help us understand what we've just kind of got hold of, we need to generate output, right? So we need to blog about what we've read about. We need to, and even if it's that inane blog, it says, I watched Simon Sinek's Leaders Start With Why. Right? Anyone seen that TED Talk? Fantastic TED Talk, right? You start with why. And anyway, so I blogged about that and how it relates to agile development, right? We start with why, and then we get to how, and then it's the what, right? So you blog about it, and then what that output does, your output is somebody else's input, right? So that orange input is already somebody else's output. So it just carries on that kind of circle of learning, right? And then people will learn stuff from your output because you'll have a different lens, you've got a different upbringing, a different background, right? So your output, and if you reference the authors of the stuff that you've consumed, they'll be like, sometimes you get like a comment at the bottom saying, that's an interesting spin on it. That's great, hadn't thought about that, right? I think the biggest one for me was Dave Snowden commenting on my post on Kinevin. That's just like, I opened that one up, I was like, come on. Anyway, so yeah. So, and I obviously had to add this in at the end, but it was asymmetrical, so I left it off. Talking about things, right? It's concept of see one, do one, teach one. Anyone heard about this? So in the medical profession, you see a practitioner doing something, right? So as a student, you sit there watching, and you do a lot of watching. And then after a while, you're allowed to have a go with their supervision, right? So you see one, then you do one. Not do one as in leave. Just, yeah, that's it. Yeah, this learning's over. See one, do one, teach one. So you do it, and you have a go yourself under close supervision. Has anyone been to a student hairdresser's? Oh man, it's just, have you, yeah? So you have the student cut one side, miss, and then they cut, yep, that's very good. Yeah, was it like that? Were you there for like half a day? Yeah. I mean, I was there for half a day, right? Just like, yeah, there's not enough coffee in the world for this, but it's a £5 haircut, right? So I'll go with it. So yeah, so they cut one side, or the master cuts one side of the hair, and then the student cuts the other, right? Matches it, and then teach one. Once you think you've mastered it and you can do it, you then try and tell someone else how to do it, and then that's when you realise how little you know about that, right? It's yeah, fantastic. So that's in the medical context. And then there's also a guy called Richard Feynman. Anyone heard of him? Fantastic. He's phenomenal. So he's got a great skill. He's got a massive brain, but his skill is taking all this science and then packaging it up in a way that someone like me can understand it. So Brian Cox, I guess, is another example of that, right? And then that using the kind of, well, the method that we're going to come onto now is a massive skill for knowledge acquisition and processing and sharing. Okay, so this is his technique is to study a topic and then teach it to a child, right? So that's where you teach it to a child, and then when they don't get it, you take those knowledge, you go back and restudy to fill those knowledge gaps, and then you simplify, and you keep doing that cycle. Make it simple, and digest it down so it's simple enough for a child to understand. Okay. All these links. Are you going to share the slide? Yeah. All this stuff is linked in the notes, so you can go and explore deeper. Okay, any questions on interacting with your education? No? Okay. Chamber of Echoes. Right. So what I'm seeing with social media these days, and it's good that it gives you access to a lot of information, you need to be very careful of what information you're consuming, because that information has been heavily skewed, right? So fake news is hot right now. Okay? So imagine fake news in your world of learning. So imagine if that gets in and people can kind of corrupt what you see so that you learn something different to what you intended, right? So there's different ways that this echo chamber. So is everyone familiar with the concept of an echo chamber? Yeah? Just the same idea as bouncing around. Good. So the problem with an echo chamber is that the sources we learn from have all been filtered, right? Both by us and by the robots. Come on, let's play down AI and the machine. Yeah. So some examples. So first of all, so by ourselves, right? We all on these social media, right? We personally choose who we follow, right? And we follow people we like. We follow people who agree with us. We follow people who say stuff that appeals to us, right? So immediately we're creating a filter there, right? And what that leads to is confirmation bias. You only see stuff that people confirm what your opinion, right? So it's the same with, so confirmation bias. You know when you have a sore tummy and you start Googling what sore tummy is, before you know you're in hospital checking yourself in going, I think my stomach's collapsing, right? So that's confirmation bias. The results you see on Google, you only pick up on the ones that confirm your theory, right? And you get there quite quickly. You get there in 2 or 3 results. The other one is groupthink, right? You all come around to this consensus. You come around to consensus way too quickly because you're all thinking and saying the same things, right? So I'm not going to give you a curated list of curated lists tonight because otherwise I'm just leading you straight into my filter, right? I'm not going to do that. There's a few tools that you'll definitely get a few ideas of where to go exploring for more software testing learning tonight, right? I'm not going to give that to you. What you get with a curated list is someone's opinion of what is valuable. If you follow that curated list, then you're going down the same path as them, right? So it's important to, take that curated list and then look for other stuff. But we'll get into that in a moment. So that's us filtering, and I feared this would happen. So this is Google. So we're now onto the robots controlling what we see, right? So I search for software testing and software testing in incognito, right? Google skews your results based on your history, obviously, right? This is where all the kind of cookies and stuff's coming from. So the results are different when I'm incognito mode to when I'm logged into mine. So there's 3 states. There's logged into your browser, there's not logged into your browser, and there's incognito mode. And you get different results back, right? There was an article I read a couple of years ago that if you shared an article via Google+, right, and then someone searched for that article, the article that was shared via Google+ was ranked higher than the original article because Google favored its own product, right? This is how you get manipulated. And there's a whole other raft of cognitive biases in software development, but this is a big one, right? So depending on whether you're logged into it, Skyscanner, let's make it real, right? When you search for flights, when you search again in your normal browser, you get different prices, right? Skyscanner's looking at a price that you will buy. They change the price on likelihood to buy, right? It's quite scary. So if you do a search for a flight and you want to search again, do it in incognito or do all your searching in incognito. It's a pain in the hoop to put all the detail back in again, but that's what they're hoping for, right? Just do it and you'll get a different price. Right, so that's one example. YouTube and Netflix. So YouTube, you follow people on YouTube, yeah? Again, so you're just seeing what their content, but also the autoplay on YouTube, the autoplay on Netflix, right, is a robot determining what it thinks you want to watch, right? Based on Netflix. Netflix people here? Yeah? What does it say when you're watching a title or you're looking through the traps, like what can I watch tonight? 3 hours later, what can I watch? It says because of your interest in Meg shark film, yeah, whatever, right? And it starts feeding you ideas based on its algorithm of what you should watch, right? Same with YouTube, autoplay generates that list of autoplay. Based on what? Just because of what you watched in the past? So my autoplay on YouTube is a mixture of TED Talks, slime, recipes for slime, because I've got 8-year-old girls, yeah, testing lectures. So it's a real mix. It's just like, well, why would I want to watch an unboxing of a slime packet thing? Anyway, so yeah. So again, this is how you are being manipulated and your sources are being filtered, right? So we've done by the ones that you choose, and these are the ones that the bots choose, okay? Technology is called filter bubbles, and there's a wiki page on that, right? So filter bubbles tends to relate to the bots and how they're kind of keeping you herded in. So how can you stop that? How can you break this echo chamber? Make sure you interact with people you disagree with, and they disagree with you, right? And have a grown-up conversation and say, right, we are 2 different viewpoints, okay? Because you will learn something from them and they will learn something from you. There's a quote, isn't there, that says, what's the quote? Speak to everyone you don't know or something because they know stuff you don't. Anyway, I'll find out. But it's fascinating, right? The idea being that my son knows more about nursery than I do, right? He goes to nursery, I don't. he knows more about nursery than I do, so I could ask him a question and I'm going to learn something about his nursery, right? What did you have today? I had rice cakes. Lovely, right? Anyway, in Twitter, use the hashtags, right? So people use Twitter as a search engine. Okay, so all the stuff that's going on these days with Trump, for example, and all those kind of highly charged political things, if your Twitter feed is just your mates retweeting and sharing and stuff that they've read from someone else, you're going to get a skewed side of the article, right? What people do is they use the hashtags, right? And then you see all sides of the coin. So I guess for a football match, the England-Colombia hashtag, right? If I search my mates, they're just going to be tweeting stuff about the how unfair the ref was for England, right? And how the hand of God that saved us, right? Whereas the Colombians that we'll be seeing, they'll be seeing a whole different story, right? About like, it was right for us to climb on that player's back. And that's how you play football, and get up in the ref's face. That's how you play football, right? So you see both sides of the coin. You're breaking that filter that you put yourself in. Different counter arguments. So I touched on this before, right? If you're searching for something in Google about test cases are bad for software testing, right? As an example, that's your stance, that's my stance. You will find loads of articles that say, yeah, agree with you, right? So your confirmation bias. And if you go to page 1 and you go, oh, right, yeah, everyone agrees with me, test cases are bad, right? For all the different reasons. You need to go in and dig deeper and find out why test cases are good. You need to find the opposite, because test cases add value in certain contexts, right? So it isn't just a blanket. So you need to understand what those counter arguments are. And you could bet your bottom dollar for every opinion there's always at least two or three counter arguments, right? So it's really important to go and find those and understand where they're coming from. Don't just dismiss them as nonsense. Understand where they're coming from, okay? Yeah, turn off autoplay. Don't let it rule your life, right? You determine what film you watch next. Not Netflix, right? Not YouTube. You'll control your own autoplay. Turn it off. Okay. Any questions on echo chambers? No? It's good. It's quite warm in here, isn't it? Go on, Matt.
How do you, I mean, when you're talking to salespeople, you almost get yourself into an echo chamber because they want to sell you something, and that conversation is only going to be driven one way.
Yep.
How do you break that when you're dealing with kind of one-to-one conversations?
So are you talking specifically like a tool vendor trying to tell you how their tool will solve your specific problem?
Or somebody who's just telling you how good something is. How do you break that in an individual conversation? It's easy to go and you're talking about Twitter or Google to search for something different, to find a different way of searching. But in one-to-one conversation, when somebody's trying to drive that conversation, it's a little harder to break that conversation, to veer it off into.
Okay, so we can't go into a specific, but I'm sure you could sit there and say, I'm sure there's a way that tool doesn't solve my agile testing crisis, right? I can't tell you the answer right now, but even if it's like you can automate 100% of your test cases. If someone's saying that to you, right, you can cry BS on that straight away, because yes, you can automate all 100% of the test cases, but what value does that give you? There's still a whole lot of stuff that hasn't been tested.
Questions solve that to a degree by asking questions that are there.
Yeah. So you can flip it around and just turn it back on. Don't answer the question and just ask them a question in return, and just say, "Where's that coming from?" And then you get to the intent of the question, and then it's all back on them, and you don't have to worry. Where did that question come from, Matt? Right. Okay. So please be here. I'm going to summarise. Right. So I always start by using the cheap, free learning resources. Sorry, I just hit my mic. And this is the same with tooling as well, right? Don't go for the tool that's going to cost you the most money or going to be the hardest one to break out of the contract. See what free tools you can do that you can change quickly. As you start realising, actually, this topic is something I want to get into, start being prepared to pay some cash, right? And just go, actually, yeah, this is worth £10 of my time, like a book, right? And then when you go like, yeah, I'm all in, this is me, this is what I want, be prepared to get the checkbook out and pay that cash, right? As long as you understand that actually if I pay this, I can then, so for example, from a contract world, it would be like, if I have this under my belt, I can then go into a company and gain experience with that toolkit or with that process and charge more money for it, right? So it's that kind of idea. It's just like, right, this course is going to cost me £1,000, but I can get that back by increasing my rate by £200 a day la-di-da, I'll have it back in a week, right? It's that kind of idea. Same thing for when you're employed, right? If you can say to your boss or someone who you need to convince to put you on that course, just say, look, we can automate 100% of the test cases, right? That will save us all this time for free. Anyway, but again, it just kind of, once you've been educated, you'll be able to see the value it will give you, and that will help with that kind of, that financial conversation. Play back your learning, so do make sure that whatever you input, make sure you output it somewhere, right? Even if you just write Word doc for yourself and don't share it to a wider audience, which is how I started in the first place. It's like, I just want to process it. I don't want people to read it because it's too embarrassing. But actually, when you put it out there, the testing community is really safe on the whole. There's a few people, right? But on the whole, it's really quite safe, and you get some great feedback. And you're like, how did I miss that? That's really obvious. So yeah, once you get into a kind of testing community, they will help you and they will grow. So the testing community has grown. Like, we're in the same community, right? It has grown us. So yeah, I can't complain. But yeah, I welcome criticism of my stuff. So I will always ask for feedback from my presentations, from my blogs, articles I write, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow, right? And check your sources, right? Check what you're linking out to, right? Chris, I've just linked that to your talk. That's brilliant. So understand your sources, right? So there's a whole world on critical thinking, right? And if you Google critical thinking in software testing, right, that's a really good way of kind of just realizing how to break the echo chamber. Understand who wrote the article, why did they write the article, what was their motivations for it. So there's the story about an article came out saying that people are getting vitamin D deficiencies because they're wearing suntan cream, right? So yeah, so and guess what this company's selling, right? Vitamin D supplements. So it's, oh, I do wear suntan cream. Right, I do need vitamin D supplements, right? So anyway, so there's a reason why people publish stuff. So you've got to understand what that reason is, what their motivations are. Okay. And then some actual learning models, because I've just talked about my stuff. Kolb's experiential learning model, done and done learning model, learning by teaching. Again, all these links are in the presentation. Conceptual modeling. And that is me. Okay, that's the talk done.